Welcome back in, everybody, to a nighttime edition of Birds 365. It's our first ever nighttime show on Birds 365. Doing it because Johnny Mac is working hard, man, down at NovaCare all day long today. Down there very early on. You saw the whole practice live, so we wanted to make sure we could give you guys 2 hours of content every day during training camp, and this is our way to do it. So, a reminder: we will be live again tomorrow night after practice, as Johnny Mac has a similar schedule in the morning. So I'll be live in the morning like I was this morning. Maybe I'll get John by phone for a couple minutes if he's able to do it. If not, it'll just be me with you guys again, and then we'll be live again tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern time to 8 p.m. coming out of the National Football Show. So thank you guys all for being here, for adjusting your guys' schedules, and continuing to support the show. We appreciate that very much. John, before we move into some of the deeper questions, I do want to ask, do you think the Cooper DeJean injury it changes the James Bradbury situation with his versatility? And now you lose a guy that's very versatile. You know, Cooper was talked about. He can play safety. He can play slot. He could play outside. You know, I'm not saying he was going to do all those things, but he was at least the guy that could. Does that change the projection for what James Bradbury might be for this team? Or if not Bradbury, does it change what they might do with any of the other guys?
I don't think so. It's July 24th. If everything goes to plan, he'll be back August 14th, somewhere mid-August range. And he's going to be a part of this team. So, no, I don't think it changes anything. Unless something develops and it becomes a more serious type of issue. But the Eagles were very confident that it would be a short-term injury. So I don't think it changes anything in the long term. And that's what Howie was saying. This is a player that's going to be here, hopefully from their perspective, for 10 years or so. So you never know if guys are going to develop, but that's the plan. So they're not worried about 3 weeks in the summer.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying it's going to affect his 10-year career, but will it affect his 2024 season? That's my question.
Well, it'll push it back. If you thought he had a chance to be a starter, and a lot of people did
on day one,
that's probably not happening.
Yeah,
but it doesn't mean he's not going to be a starter by week 4 or week 5, and it didn't mean he was going to be a starter all of a sudden. Avonte Maddox is still a very good player. And if Avonte stays healthy and can figure that out, there's no guarantee he would have been on the field to begin with. It seems there's like a weird kind of thing there where, like, a lot of people have no problem, I've heard, like Quinyon sit, and yet Cooper's got to be out there week 1. I kind of don't get that logic, but even without it, no, it's not going to affect any. And James Bradbury's not, they're trying to trade James Bradbury.
Which I don't think anybody's trading for him when they know they can just wait it out and the Eagles are going to have
Well, there's a lot of dumb teams. I mean, that's what Howie makes his money on. I mean, the assumption, and I fall into this trap as well, is that everybody knows he's going to have to cut him. Well, yeah, but everybody's, it happens all the time where, look at what's going on with Hassan Reddick and the Jets. I mean, the Jets are now handing out all this information about they tried to extend him before the trade. He didn't agree to it, and they traded for him anyway. And now they're dealing with this. Well, that's pretty dumb. So just because it looks obvious, and that's why Howie's taken it as long as he's taken it. Now, my one concern with that, and I said it at some point on the show, look, every time Bradbury was out there, he practiced a lot today. Wasn't like minicamp when he showed up and he got the oblique injury.
Right.
We never got to see him.
Yeah.
He was on every, unless I missed it, he was on every second team rep at safety. And that means Mekhi Gardner wasn't. And that means Avonte Maddox wasn't. They were on the third team.
Does that change your thinking at all and how the Eagles might be looking at him? I mean, if you're trying to just move him, do you want to put him out there and take away reps from your other younger guys, and two, risk potentially an injury to Bradbury? I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying, if your scale was that 95% Bradbury's gone, does it tip the scale at all in the other way?
Well, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be doing it, but then mainly, but
I
even
just
about
wonder if maybe the Eagles are viewing it a little bit differently, and maybe they're open to bringing Bradbury
well,
back.
presumably, I think it's more to do with they want to showcase,
Right.
That he has the ability to move to safety as well, because, he's never the fastest guy to begin with. And if he lost a step from that, which it seems he might have last year, then, you might have to convince people that he can play safety. But I've said it, all this for a conditional 6th-round pick, maybe. And all right, maybe Avante's a veteran player, so not as much as him, but even Avante, well, he's a corner who can play safety. So extra reps wouldn't hurt him there. But more so Mekhi Gardner, who's a young player, and maybe they don't believe in him. They're never going to tell you the truth. Maybe they do believe in him. I don't know, but any young player, and he's making the change. He's a cornerback making the shift to safety. And now he's getting reps taken away. Doesn't make sense to me.
That's why I'm like, maybe they want to keep Bradbury. I know it's not what we've been thinking, but like you say, John, you might not agree with everything the Eagles do, and I don't. But normally you can see like the logic or why they made a decision. Even if you don't agree with it, you can see the line of thinking. With this one, the line of thinking is leading me to believe maybe they're perfectly fine having James Bradbury on this team this year. I don't know. I'm just opening my mind up to that possibility. Not saying it's going to happen or it's true, just my speculation. But like you always say, normally what they does makes sense, even if you don't agree with it. This to me for a 6th or 7th.
Oh yeah, but there's occasionally, it doesn't make sense to me. And not that I'm the be all end all, but the fact of the matter is he's not a starter. So you're going to pay a guy a bunch of money to be a backup at a position he's not used to. And oh, by the way, he's not going to help you on special teams at a position where typically your backups have to help you on special teams. That's when I talk about when I say typically the Eagles make sense. None of that makes sense. And this is about just trying to get something for the player and how he's going to kick that can as far as he can down the road. Man, you that's not even in theory, that's not even the 53-man roster cut. That's the trading deadline.
Yeah.
And if he does that, I think it's even worse. But again, the Eagles aren't on Hard Knocks, and you're not going to see these very honest and frank discussions about the evaluation of players. And maybe they don't evaluate certain players that highly, and they're not concerned about the developmental aspect of it. I don't know. But it doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, so we'll see what they end up doing with that, John. 2 super chats I want to get to. Leon, sorry, brother. I missed your super chat back at the start of the show. He says, John, don't forget to put sunscreen on your head. Hopefully, John, I got to get you like a JAKIB hat or something.
There's a big, I always have a hat on, so no need to worry about that.
All right, good. And then Jameson's checking in. Jameson, what's up, brother? Appreciate you being here. He says, J-Mac, how's quarterback 2 looking? Who has the edge?
Kenny Pickett edge. There is no
somebody looking for quarterback 2, Johnny Mac. How did Kenny look?
There is no competition. Kenny was
no. I'm not saying there's a competition, but how did Kenny look? Did he look all right?
It wasn't a great day for really. Kenny or Tanner didn't stand out that much. He wasn't bad, but he wasn't great. There were no turnovers, which had more to do with the defense. Typically, what Kenny did best in the spring was back shoulder stuff. We didn't see any of that. And his best throw was probably the Grant Calcaterra on the little bit of a crossing route, which was a nice throw. And then right after the play after it, the exact play after it was the pass down the seam to CJ Uzama, and CJ was open and he sort of left it behind him, which enabled Zach Bond to get back in it and get a pass breakup. So that was probably more on Kenny Pickett than anybody. And that was my defensive play of the day, because the defense didn't make many plays and Zach made a play, but it was really because Kenny left it a little bit too short. It's kind of tough to tell from the sideline. It was either short or behind him. But yeah, it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great for Kenny Pickett.
I want to thank everybody for being in. A lot of guys just checking in. So a couple people asking about wide receiver 3, straight edge. We did discuss it a little bit briefly in the open. I will circle back and have Johnny Mac re-hit on that. I know a couple people are checking in later and didn't catch the whole beginning of the show, so we will circle back and make sure we do a recap on everything. John, I want to ask you about the 2 edge rushers where my sights are set, and that's Bryce Huff and that's Nolan Smith. Those are the 2 guys I'm most curious to see this year. How did they look today, and did you see anything from those guys? I know you said it wasn't a big defensive day. The pads weren't on yet or anything, but anything you learned from those guys today?
No, nobody was. Jalix Hunt showed some things. Maybe that
there you
excite
go.
people. And maybe I always say, I think everybody looks at Jalix Hunt just automatically as redshirting him, and that's probably what's going to happen, a virtual redshirt. But, I've said from the start, you got to keep your mind open to say maybe he's just shows up and he's a natural and he can get out there and he can play. I'm not saying that's going to happen either, but I would say of the edge rushers, he's the one who stood out the most.
It's interesting.
Which is, he's playing against obviously the second team and second, third team. And remember, Mekhi Becton was with the first team because Landon wasn't there. So everything gets construed. So he's not working against Mekhi Becton. He's working against Brett Johnson. So that factors into it. Bunch of things, but he looked pretty good. And I was got Jared Allen for people who don't, he's going to be a Hall of Famer at some point. We'll see when he gets in. But I remember his rookie season, he was I believe a 4th or a 5th round pick, somewhere in that range with the Kansas City Chiefs. So this is like early 2000s. 4th round pick.
Allen. He wore 69, didn't he? The number 69.
Yeah, he's a good ball. And he does that for a reason.
I know he does. That's why I remember. I mean, I was younger when he played, but I do remember the player.
Yeah, he's a piece of work. But unbelievable player.
Did you cover him, John, when you were in Minnesota?
Oh yeah,
nice.
But they had something called the Cheese League back then for old football fans who remember. A bunch of teams, because of the weather and being cooler, when teams would go away for training camp, they train on the border of Minnesota, Wisconsin. So you had this sort of cheese league, and the Chiefs were one of those teams that would practice in Wisconsin. And I got to see Jared Allen because I was covering the Vikings at the time as a rookie in Kansas City. I had no idea who he was. He's coming from Idaho State, where he was a long snapper as well. By the way, he's the best long snapper you're ever going to see, but he's a 5-time All-Pro, and he could go in and throw a dart as a long snapper. But that I had no idea who he was, and he was a rookie, as I said, rookie day 3 pick, and he was just beating people like a drum on his first day, in one-on-ones against the Vikings, who were, a good team at the time. And I'm like, I figured out pretty quickly who he was. And like I said, eventually he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. Some guys just have it. And, that's why I bring up maybe Jalix Hunt just has it. I'm not saying that's going to happen. It's very unlikely he's going to turn into a Hall of Fame player, but I use Jared as an example. I'm sure everybody in Kansas City was saying that same type of mentality. Well, maybe he's got some potential. Maybe it'll take a year, and bang, he's got 9 sacks as a rookie, 11 in his second year, 15 and a half by his fourth year. Unbelievable natural pass rusher. Maybe, you never know.
Boy, would that be big if the project player Jalix Hunt came on like Jared Allen. That would be amazing stuff. Good breakdown there, John. Exciting to hear that Jalix Hunt had a good day. We'll see if he can keep it up. Let's go to James Carver. Big super chat from our man James. James, thank you, brother. Appreciate it as always. You're one of our biggest supporters on JAKIB Sports, and we can't thank you enough. Your support goes a long way. It goes more than I think you realize. So we appreciate you being here and your super chat, no doubt about it. 1999. James Carver says, if JB is really done then it's really best to have him at second team. It either raises his trade or it doesn't. The Eagles already had paid for him, so it's like he's a big blind in poker. Play JB in camp and hope for hit on others' needs. What's your thoughts on that, Johnny Mac?
Well, I mean, yeah, the Eagles have done it in the past. I mean, the most high profile would be Sam Bradford. You wait and you wait and you wait, and somebody gets an injury, and all of a sudden you're trading them for a first-round pick. Now, that's not going to happen. That's a quarterback. But if there's already a bunch of teams that have a lot of cornerback issues in this league. And to be honest, I'm very surprised that James hasn't been moved already because he's not that expensive. But, his film last year was pretty bad. So I assume most people think maybe he's lost it from a physical standpoint. But from the Eagles' perspective, I just don't like, especially when you need one of the young guys to develop at safety. Why take away reps from those guys? Maybe you don't believe in Tristan McMullen. Maybe you don't believe in Mekhi Gardner. Again, I'm sure they have these frank discussions, and, I'm sure they're counting on Sidney Brown when he comes back to be the main guy, but you still would like that fourth safety, and maybe that's where Cooper comes in, and maybe that's where Avonte Maddox comes in. So they have a bunch of different avenues, and maybe the belief is that we're going to go in a different direction anyway, so we can hold them and we can wait for as long as possible. But I just, is the juice worth the squeeze? What do you think you're going to get?
Right.
It's conditional fifth.
Yeah, I don't see it either.
I don't know.
I'm with you on that, Johnny Mac. Good stuff there from James Carver. Thank you, brother, for dropping that super chat. One more from Philly 500 House of Mouse Club says, will Covey make the team? We have multiple returners. Good question there. Lot to think about.
Why does everybody want to run Britton Covey out of town? He's the best punt returner in football last year. Now he's going to be the punt returner.
I don't think it's run him out of town. I think it's more of a roster crunch where it's like, if you have a guy who can play receiver and he can return good too, maybe that's the one. I'm with you though. I don't want to get rid of Britton Covey. I like him. I think he's a good player.
Yeah,
I'd like to see him though get a chance at receiver. Maybe
I would like to see him get a chance at receiver as well, because they up in the spring, he was creating more separation more consistently than any of the second or third team receivers. But I mean, he's tiny, and I get it.
He is. He's really small.
You look at him and say, well, is this guy really going to be able to help us at receiver? And maybe not. And look, you would always like the special teams, the core guys, to be able to help you somewhere else as well. And maybe if that's Anaya Smith. We just had our James Carver question. He's a big Anaya Smith guy who, in theory, could be the punt returner and help you at receiver as well. Cooper could be the punt returner, and obviously he's going to help you as a defensive back. But do you really want a young defensive back messing with being a punt returner on top of it when you're trying to teach him a bunch of different positions? I don't know if that's the way to go. And bottom line is none of them are going to be as good as Britton Covey was last year. I don't know. I don't know why people are trying to run him. Well, I do know, because he doesn't look like a football player. But if you saw the attention to detail he puts into being a punt returner, I mean, he studies the opposition like he's a coach, and he's telling his blockers what to do, where to do, when to do it. He knows when punters, he knows when you're not going to be able to return it because the punters are too good. And more than the yardage he gets is the yardage he saves.
It's a good point. A lot of people don't think about that point.
He's just really good. And I know Nick knows it because he would constantly talk about it last year. For people that don't realize that, this guy's a weapon, he called him. And he was just tremendous last year. To the point where maybe he can't live up to that this year. But if he doesn't, it's probably got to do with the blocking in front of him, because his attention to detail. I've seen his notebooks. He's got notebooks. How do you even do that with punt returns? He's got notebooks of just information that give him a step ahead, and nothing against those other guys, but I'm sure they're not going to bring that same attention to detail. And I don't think anybody in the NFL does. So I'm not picking on any of the Eagles returners.
That's pretty impressive, though, that Britton Covey does that. I appreciate stuff like that, even if it's just for punt returning. I think that attention to detail is good, and I think, by the way, I think it tells a lot about a person. When you see somebody putting that much time and effort and care into what they do, even when it's a smaller level. Talking about the NFL, I think that's pretty dope. So cool to hear that about Britton Covey. John, one more thing I want to ask you, and then we'll recap a couple extra broader things. A lot of people just checking in. Wayne Miller says he just checked in. Wayne, thanks for being here, brother. So we'll make sure we do a full recap again at the end, just of John's key takeaways from the day. But John, right guard, that was one of the big things coming into camp, and I failed to ask you about it in hour one. I apologize. Does it look like it's Tyler Steen all the way? How did he look today? Any battle for him coming, or does he look comfortable? Do they look comfortable with him in that position?
Well, it's one day. They haven't even put on the pads yet. So, I mean, that's one of those positions, and Nick talked about that. There are certain positions where and Nick said it's still football. And we all know it, running back, offensive line, linebacker, defensive line, especially interior defensive line, where you got to wait till the pads come on. And, Tyler had to get stronger. Lane keeps saying he's gotten a lot stronger. So that's a positive. Sometimes guys need that year in an NFL weight program where their only job is to get bigger, stronger, and prepared. So that's all positive. But remember, Mekhi Becton was playing left guard today. So there's no, he was the starting left guard because Landon was out. So he would be the guy that pushing him most likely if he starts to falter. And that might be a situation. I bring up Isaac all the time, Isaac Seumalo, because it's such an interesting comparison. Isaac was a third-round pick. Tyler was a third-round pick. The Eagles wanted Isaac to be a starter in year 2. They want Tyler to be a starter in year 2. Left guard versus right guard. Isaac was a left guard at the time. And he started the 2017 Super Bowl season, he was the starting left guard, Isaac Seumalo, and he got benched because he didn't play well. And they went to Chance Warmack at times. They went to Stephen Wisniewski. And that's what will happen this time. I think they want Tyler Steen to win the job, and I would bet on him being the week 1 starter. But if he falters, they have the contingencies set up, whether it's Mekhi Becton or Matt Hennessy or even Max Sharping. They have a bunch of contingencies set up if he does fail. But it's pretty clear they want him to be the starting right guard.
Yeah, so we'll see how that plays out. Good breakdown there, Johnny Mac. It'll be interesting to see. John, when do they put on the pads? Did they say that yet or no?
No, it's that. I can look it up in the break. They have it. The acclimation period is collectively bargained every year. I forget. They change it every year.
So it's not up to the Eagles. It's more in the CBA and
yeah. No, it's not at all up to the Eagles.
I didn't know that.
You have to wait a certain amount of days before you can put the pads on for the first time. And I'll when we go to break, I'll look it up. But they have the Guardian caps now. Yeah, everybody can wear them if they want. Obviously, if they don't want, they can also not wear them. And I believe you can wear them in games this year. So I'm going to be interested to see.
I know. I don't know if anybody's going to do that. Did you see the picture that came out of LA with the Chargers? Did you see that? They had
I did not.
A cover. So they had like a cover for the cap, and it like had the logo, and it like they tried to make it almost look like a helmet as best they could.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I guess.
I was wondering. Yeah,
they look goofy. Yeah, the NFL is not going to try out like goofy looking things on the field. So they did have a cover. I'll see if I can pull that picture up for you. But yeah, so we'll see what ends up happening with them.
Yeah. So, but yeah. Anyway, that's a CBA thing. And Nick even talked about Nakobe Dean was like, can we put the pads on? And no, you can't.
Yeah, was that more of a what's it called? Nick pandering to his player a little bit.
Maybe. Here's
the picture of the Guardian cap, just so you can see it. See how they have like a cover with the logo.
Oh yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I do too, because they look goofy without it. So at least if they go this route, at least they'll blend in, and maybe they can make it a little tighter. Which they
I like that. Well, I'm not Jeff Kerr, but I like the Chargers uniforms as well in general. But
yeah, they're cool. They're cool unis for sure.
Joe Alt, he's going to be a big time player.
I agree. I think he's going to be great.
They look much better. The Eagles Guardian caps are just these bland, goofy
they're goofy looking things.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Remember when Kelsey put the bubble wrap on top of his Guardian cap?
Yeah. One more super chat, John, I want to go to here from James Carver. Drops another $10. Thank you, man. I appreciate you, James. You know that. Again, the support is very appreciated. He says, this is a good point. This is where I was going. When you ask why do people want Covey gone, I don't think it's that. I think it's more this. And James Carver points it out nicely here. He says, Britain's studying of kicks and kickers is crazy. But given the 37 100%ers in your article, for anybody that doesn't know, that was John's 100% making the team in his article on SI.com. It makes it hard to keep if he can't play wide receiver. And isn't he as tall as Edelman? It's a good point. Like if he doesn't contribute anywhere else, that's where I would wonder if it's just a number crunch, and they can't get him on the roster. I think they're going to. But to answer James' question, Johnny Mac, go ahead.
Well, one of the things I criticized Howie for this year, this offseason, he hasn't got much criticism, but and really it shows up at wide receiver most because you don't have a lot of depth and you're kind of pigeonholed into keeping certain guys, namely Britton because of the punt returns and Anias and Johnny Wilson because they're day 3 picks, and GMs never want to cut their picks nowadays. They'll think about it in the 7th. They hate cutting picks now. It's absurd. They used to cut picks all the time. They never do it anymore.
Yeah, they don't anymore.
So, if you think about it, and then you have the top 3, that's it. That's your whole roster at wide receiver is you're pigeonholed yourself. Really with the only maneuver ability being Paris Campbell versus John Ross or somebody from outside the organization at that third receiver spot. If Howie says, I can get one of these guys through waivers, more would be Johnny Wilson, I would think, than Anias. Maybe a small chance, very small chance, he might risk him through waivers and do it that way. But yeah, I think he's pigeonholed himself to a bunch of receivers that can't help him at receiver, which I don't think is a great situation to be in. Now you hope AJ and Devontae stay healthy. They're both very durable, but you saw it when AJ got hurt late last season. That was a freaking disaster. People forget that, man. I mean, yeah, the team stunk down the stretch and they stunk with AJ, but it was a whole different ball game when he wasn't there. It was like super stink when he's not there. And you hope he stays healthy, but yeah, I don't like the backup receiver situation. But Paris played really well today. And if Paris plays like that, maybe that shifts things.
Yeah, so we'll see. Good breakdown there, though, of why it's a complex situation and where Howie pigeonholed himself. Gerald Ray asked what that article was. So I want to bring it up real quick and just show him where you can go and find it. This was John's 100%er Club, which is a great article. He gives you the 37 plays, 37 players who have nothing to worry about heading into training camp. Go to si.com/NFL/Eagles, and you will find all of John's work over there. He also had a great recap of the training camp today. So make sure you go and check out all of John's work over there at SI. And that was the article I was referring to, or James was referring to in the super chat. So good stuff there. Johnny Mac, I think we recapped the most of the things. I don't think we left anything out. If anybody in the chat wants to hear about something, feel free to put it, and I will ask John about it. We're going to get to another commercial break soon, coming up here in a minute, and then we'll do an overall recap to close out the last 30 minutes of the show. John, anything I missed? Anything on your mind that I didn't talk about with you coming out of day one of training camp here? I know there was a lot of people talking about different things on social media and stuff. Anything I missed that's top of mind for you?
I'm trying to think. We went over everything on the defensive side as far as the churn in the back seven. I think there's going to continue to be a lot of rotation in the coming days before they settle things down, probably in the second half of camp, to see, not only who's going to play, but what positions and what kind of value they're going to have in sub packages. I do think it was pretty clear today, again, from Howie Roseman, that don't close that book on Nakobe Dean, man. I'm at the point where I'm almost going to guarantee he's a starter next to Devin White if he's healthy, and that's obviously a big if, but yeah. And they already got him working. They started out in those run sort of support defense with Devin White and Zach Bond, but then they put Devin White and Nakobe together. And I think ultimately that's what it's going to be. Devin White and Nakobe, which, tallest short guy in the circus, I guess. But I think
and what
that's
was the setup there? Who was the Mike? Who was the Will?
Looked like Devin was the Mike.
Interesting. I don't know if don't you think?
Well, it seems to be
a better Will in that situation if it's those two. Don't you think that would be? Well, I mean, I don't know. In my head, I look at Nakobe.
I'd look at Nakobe as the better Mike as well. But
yeah,
from the standpoint of what Bick is thinking, when they play dime and there's only one linebacker on the field, in theory, that's going to be Devin White. And, why change the green dot if you don't have to? Would be my theory. Now, how I would defeat that is just give it to Reed Blankenship. It's not like old school football where you need the middle linebacker because linebackers are so few on the field. They're so 3-down linebackers. And Reed wore it last year at times when they had so many issues at linebacker. I just give it to Reed, and then you have your problem solved because he's going to be out there every play if healthy, and he's smart enough to do it. And then you can toggle back and forth with Jakobi, Devin White, however you want. And also don't sleep on Ben Van Sumeren, who also got some reps. I saw him get one first-team rep at least and a bunch of second-team reps. So maybe they are going to give Ben Van Sumeren a shot. And I think, Howie mentioned that linebacker was an interesting position. I think he said exciting position. And I think part of the reason it's exciting is because what I've said on the show, they're all, if you want to go Devin White and Zach Bond, when you want to go all the way down to the third team with Jeremiah Trotter and whomever, whether it's Ben Van Sumeren or it's not that big of a difference.
Right. Good to know that Ben Van Sumeren got a little action out there, Johnny Mac. He was your one bold pick that might have an impact on the team just because of the
and Oren Burks I haven't mentioned. That's who I haven't. Oren Burks was practicing, but he wasn't in team drills and even in special teams where he's a very good special teams player, reputed. So he may have tweaked himself during the early part of practice, and maybe he'll show up tomorrow as being out. But it was weird because he wasn't out there at all. So that's part of the reason why Ben probably got kicked up a bit, because Oren Burks wasn't working in team drills.
Good stuff, Johnny Mac. Last question on Jakobi Dean before we get to a break here, and then we'll just do one more 30-minute quick recap for anybody that just checked in late. Not everybody was here for the start of the show, so I just want to give them a chance to hear kind of an overall recap. We'll run through the offense, the defense, the press conferences, and then we will get out of here for the night. Johnny Mac, I know it's been a long day for you and another long one tomorrow, so good stuff by you. Jakobi Dean injury. All good? Is he back to 100%? Is the foot still bothering him? Where are we on the injury front with Jakobi Dean?
Well, he's completely cleared. Haven't talked to him yet, so he's not going to let on anyway. It was a long Lisfranc surgery's a difficult surgery, difficult injury. He was. I talked to him a bunch when he was going through it. He was on a rollabout for a while, then he kicked that for the crutches. Then he had a walking boot. So it's been a long time. He wasn't completely cleared at the beginning of OTAs, but he is completely cleared now and ready to go. And hopefully it stays that way.
Yeah, good stuff there. So hopefully Jakobi can be fully healthy this year, and we'll get a good look at him and how he might look as a Mike line or whatever position they have him in. As a linebacker, though, Howie Roseman threw a support again behind Jakobi today. Obviously, they're high on the guy. They still believe in the player. At least that's what the front that they're putting on. So hopefully Jakobi Dean can be something. I want to thank everybody for being here. A lot of great comments, a lot of funny comments. The chat is hilarious tonight. It's a little bit of a different vibe tonight, Johnny Mac, for the nighttime show on Birds 365. So good stuff. Thank you for all the work today. We're going to hit one more break here, and then we'll close out with another overall analysis of the day. So thank you all for being here. Make sure you guys hit a like on the show. Stay tuned. Birds 365 will be right back to close out this special Wednesday edition of Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.